several applicants that applied previously, and they're going to pull from a hat. Well, we're not going to wait on them to pull from a hat. We are asking for the judges to intervene, and we have a special master, and our attorneys will speak to that process a little bit more. They go back to court, I believe, on January 2nd or 5th, January 5th, with their pleadings, and we are asking as a voice, our plaintiffs that are represented here today and those that are not represented, that we can't depend on a commission whose intentions might have been well. But we know from the two experts that were leading them and misguiding them. If you looked at this opinion from Judge Kethledge and the three judges, if you looked at this, if you read this, it's really damning what happened. Secret meetings, a lack of transparency, using racial quotas, breaking basically the U.S. Constitution, and that's not acceptable. So I want to make sure that those that testified that really helped to lock this case and this victory in place to come and have remarks this morning about the process previously, but you will see names in the coming weeks of those who will participate, like Keith Williams, to review the maps that our expert has provided, Sean Trendy. Now, so it's clear, I reached out to the party chair prior to going to court on November the 1st. We had conversations, we had a Zoom. She committed to sitting down and coming with some maps, as she stated herself, that there were some better maps. We are looking to work together to preserve the integrity of what we have currently, but we have to work together. And so I am looking for stakeholders who will be named later that will be a part of that process to help ensure that we pick the best 7 maps for the House going forward by April, and then determine if we're going to call for a special election for the Senate, or if we're going to, should we disenfranchise those whose senators are a part of this, the 6 senates? Should we call for a special election? That's a conversation we're having with our plaintiffs. It takes time to call all of them and have these individual conversations. It's the holiday time. We did not expect this victory this fast, and we're just in awe that it was unanimous, but we want to make sure that we do our due diligence in talking to all plaintiffs to determine our next steps. But as I go further, I want to open it up for Virgil Kai Smith, to have remarks this morning about the process previously and what we're looking forward to, and then followed by him, former Rep. Lamar Lemons.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'll be brief. I was taught by my father and those that came before me, when redistricting, when the census comes around every 10 years, it is very imperative that we protect our lines. And what do I mean by that? The 63 Voting Rights Act, or the 65 Voting Rights Act, gave us the ability to draw majority, minority seats. And that's key, majority, minority seats. So in the State House, we went from at least 10 members basically coming out of Detroit to 3. In the Michigan Senate, we went from 5 to 1. So moving forward, these lines have to come back south, because you cannot recreate the land. They teach you that in the whole redistricting process. You cannot recreate the land. So the lines have to come back south, because what they did was water us down by moving north and making us where, look at these. You cannot, Senate District 11, 10, 3, 8, all on the 8-mile border, where we're only 35, 45%. We cannot win. But the Voting Rights Act says you have to have 51%. If it's a majority, you have to have, if it's a majority minority population, you have to do everything, exhaust all options to keep that majority whole. And that was basically our fight in this. Thank you.
The Honorable Lamar Lemons, whose phone is ringing.
Let me say this. First of all, as all Democrats, we do want a Democratic majority. So let's make that clear. However, not at the expense. They cut us too deep in their quest to get in zeal to get the majority. They totally disregarded the African American interest. And it's reflective, since they've had the majority, our issues have not been addressed. So we don't want to be compacted, but we don't want to be diluted either. So the Democratic Party seems to have the interest to dilute us to increase theirs, while the Republicans want to compact us so that the party that most of us belong to is weakened. The compromise is in the middle. I believe that through this process, we'll get a compromise of 50 to 51%. I personally managed a campaign with a neophyte for an African-American district to become a senator and make sure that we got representation. So I know, and I did this twice. So it is important that we have that careful balance, the balance between race and partisanship. Thank you.
Thank you. They were very modest, but if you ever have time to go back and read their testimonies, we wouldn't be here today without their testimonies. There's something about institutional memory, and that is why I brought this photo today that traces back and reflects on all of the Black caucus members throughout the history of the legislature to represent that. That's what this is about. In this whole process, we lost 20%, not just in the city of Detroit, but throughout the state of Michigan. If she could have been here today, Councilmember Pro Tem, Vice Chair Pro Tem, Virginia Williams from Romulus is also a part of this lawsuit. She's one of the people that went up to court with us. She's out of town today, but she would have been here. So this is much more far-reaching than Detroit. Detroit had the hardest hit with the loss of seats, but this has been statewide, the shrinking of the Black caucus. And the reason this is important in understanding having voices in the caucus room, during my first tenure, the first fight that I had to take on was for DPS. I now serve on the Detroit School Board, but if it wasn't for being in the room pushing back, many of my colleagues in the Democratic caucus didn't understand why it was important to make sure that Detroit was not left without an elected school board. We would have been the largest district in the state that would have been treated differently. When it came down to fighting for Benton Harbor schools and the closure, as a former science teacher, I was there and working with Mayor Marcus Muhammad and Alma Wheeler Smith and those who understand the importance of education and not just closing schools. Being a voice in the caucus that get up, we go to war in caucus, talking about our issues for Detroit. When it came down to the emergency manager laws, when it came down to redlining and auto no fault, we went to war fighting for what was right in the caucus room, saying not on our watch. When it came down to the George Floyd killing and the police accountability bills, we were told to wait, and that's what always happens. When we don't have a majority, we're told to wait until we get it. When we get it, we're told to wait so we can keep it. So the Black agenda always suffers in the Democratic caucus because our voices are not being respected and not heard. And we're saying nothing about us without us. Nothing about us without us. And that's what today is all about. I want to bring forth our attorneys, but before I do, our senior members, if they wanted to have any remarks. Judge, if you wanted to give remarks today, this is a historical moment, and I'm appreciative that you all took the time to come out this morning. So if you would like to have brief remarks.
History has a way of repeating itself. And we're tired of being the underdog in the repeat of history. We've seen it time and time again. The larger community does not want to recognize slavery. They do not want to recognize segregation. They do not want to admit to segregation or slavery. But we endure it every day. We are trying to eliminate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can I move them? Yes. Grab the other piece, grab the other piece. The Honorable Teola P. Hunter. If you want to have remarks.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here today to really speak to what has been lingering in the state of representatives in Michigan since the time I was an elected official. I am here to support what has been passed. I'm here to support to make that whatever is passed, it will come to fruition. We are here to support everything that has been done in the past and thus far. And we have continued to fight for what has been done in the past. And now we are here to support what is happening today. And I'm here for you. Thank you.
Thank you. As we move the mics, thank you. Give her a round of applause. We stand on their shoulders and we thank them for their continued guidance as we endeavor to serve our communities. I want to have now Attorney Jennifer Green to come up, and she will introduce all of her colleagues from Clark Hill to talk about next steps, and then we'll open up for questions in this process. Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer Green from Clark Hill. I have with me Jay Fleming and Amia Banks. Mike Patwell from Clark Hill could not be here today, and John Bursch, our co-counsel, is also not with us today. First, I just want to say it's been an honor and a pleasure to represent the voters of Detroit in this worthy cause. And in terms of the legal update, as mentioned earlier, there is a supplemental briefing deadline that's been imposed by the court. We will be submitting a brief to the court on January 2nd, which will discuss next steps and what we believe the proper remedy is for the currently drawn maps, which have been deemed unconstitutional. The hearing on that has been set for January 5th, which is Friday at 1:30 in Kalamazoo, and at that time, the court will consider what remedy to impose. The current intent is to seek a special master who will assist the commission with revising the current maps. As discussed earlier, the commission is down 3 members, and it was a fledgling commission to begin with, so it's currently in a little bit of disarray, and the current belief is that the commission could definitely benefit from a special master who is a professional and experienced map drawer. There will also be proposed demonstration maps submitted to the court, and eventually the court will decide, given the urgent timeline, dates to impose for the revised maps and next steps. There's a lot of work left to be done, but obviously we're thrilled with the victory, and it's been a pleasure representing the voters of Detroit.
Before you step away, do you have a specific person to be the special master?
We are going to submit a list of preferred candidates that we think would be well-suited and that have experience in this area, and I believe it will be up to the court to decide which one is appropriate.
And when you say this area, do you mean this area of study, or do you mean this physical geographic area?
Both. We have candidates on the list that are Michigan citizens, which I think is appropriate given that it is a citizens commission, and I think it would further the goals of the commission to have a Michigander on the commission to serve as special master. But there are also several that are that we've pulled nationwide that have experience in redistricting and serving as special masters, in particular in situations where there are Voting Rights Act claims and Equal Protection Act claims.
Is there someone that overlaps both?
There are, and I don't want to get into the names of the individuals just because we have not contacted some of the individuals, and I don't want to say their name, without them knowing, but we do have a list in mind, and I think that it would be appropriate, especially given the transparency goals of the commission. It was never the intent of the plaintiffs to commandeer the process or supplant the commission's work. And now that liability has been found, I think it would be appropriate to further the commission with a special master who would have to abide by all of the open transparency rules that have so far governed the commission.
Well, when you think about the recent circumstances that led us up to now, how do you make sure that these candidates are appropriately vetted?
Well, that's out of our hands. The members that will be appointed, given the 3 commissioners that have left, that will be by random draw. Those people, if memory serves, there are some people that were not chosen in the last round, but they are still on the list. I believe there were 54 candidates left, and they will be randomly selected. It will be via live stream and it will be public, but they will not be vetted any differently than the prior commissioners.
I also meant like for these special map drawers, the map masters.
Yes, so I believe what the process will be if the court decides to appoint a special master, which again, it's up to the court to decide what the appropriate remedy and what the process will be moving forward. We would submit probably background information and curriculum vitae of each of the special masters and demonstrate that they are experienced in this field so that we are not using people that have never drawn a map. I think everyone sitting through trial can appreciate that while these commissioners were extremely diligent and had very good intentions, they all admitted on the stand that they were completely inexperienced, and the judges referenced it in their opinion, that while their heart was in the right place, they really struggled to balance all the factors and really understand the map-making process. And so we think that a special master would really benefit the process moving forward, particularly because we have an election cycle that is impending and special elections are coming up, and there's just a whole plethora of very urgent considerations given the election cycle.
And with the special master, would they have an equal voice, if you will, like the commissioners, or would they be able to overrule them? How would their, if approved, how would their role work?
I think the court would have to define the scope. There's a federal rule that governs this sort of thing, and the scope of the special master's appointment would be set forth in a court order. So I think that's sort of still in development.
Have the plaintiffs weighed in on some of the prospective special masters, and if you could step back?
Just give me your first and last name again, I'm sorry.
Jennifer Green.
What is it?
Jennifer Green from Clark Hill.
Jennifer, J-E-N-N-I-F-E-R?
Yes,
And Green, G-R-E-E-N?
just like the color.
So, perfect transition. There's 3 plaintiffs here today that came up, drove up, rode up, sacrificed to make sure that we go up to Kalamazoo. One of which I stated attended 20+ meetings. So I want Shirley Ratton to come up, Natalie Bianami, who was very much a part of this process in another capacity. I'll let her speak to that part. And then former council member Devontae Sherrod. Oh, here you are. If I can get these 3 plaintiffs to come up, Natalie, these are the folks that were able to go up. Everybody, some wanted to, but everybody couldn't make that journey daily, and so these were the ones that were very much a part of this process. And thank you to our council member and Councilmember Waters, Adam Holier, Jimmy Womack, that helped to finance us riding up to Kalamazoo, and some others that are not here, Chanel Jackson, Brian Banks, but let me have the plaintiffs speak to some of these issues in process.
And if you could introduce yourself when you step up.
Sure. I'm Natalie Bianami, and I have attended over 30+ redistricting commission meetings. I have been fully aware. I have also helped to draw maps. The thing is that we want to see some things different. We want to see things made whole. We want to see fairness, partisan fairness. We want to see maps that do not dilute our voices, and we want to make sure that Black leadership is understood and matters. And with these maps being redrawn, we can see a lessening of the dilution of our Black voices. Black leadership matters, and under our watch, we want to make sure that we are represented with people who look like us, understand our communities, can speak to the voices of our concerns. If you don't have people who understand what's happening in Detroit, what's happening with our political processes, they will not be able to speak very frequently and urgently about our causes and noticing what needs to be done. So that's what I'm here for. I'm here representing our community for people who are less fortunate, who can't have a voice. We want our legislators and former legislators to understand that our representation matters. period, point blank.
Can you spell your last name?
The last name is spelled B as in Bravo, I as in Igloo, E as in Edward, N as in Nancy, hyphen, A as in Alpha, I as in Igloo, M as in Mary, E as in Edward.
You've done that before.
I have.
Let me step away. If I could just ask you.
Sure.
So, when did you realize that the mapping, how the lines have been drawn, wasn't appreciated?
I think I learned that early on. I have been working successfully with various candidates and running campaigns. And when you're seeing, as Sherry has clearly illustrated, the historical need and understanding of voices and what has happened in our past, we see that history is repeating itself. This is not anything new, but it's just becoming ever so present that not just here in Michigan, but throughout the country as a whole, that determination is absolutely essential in making sure that Black voices are heard. And this is not anything new. It's old, it's repeating itself. And we just want to make sure that people understand, just not here in Detroit, but throughout our state of Michigan, that we want partisan fairness. We want to be heard, we want to be recognized, and we want fairness. I think that is an understatement to say the least.
And you're from Detroit?
I am from Detroit, born, raised, and educated right here in the city of Detroit.
And a former teacher.
A former teacher, yes.
And we talked together. Former council member Devontae Sherrard from Ecorse.
Yes, I am so glad that the district has changed and we're fighting for it. And it's just a good thing that we have people that's supporting us, that's representing us, and that's willing to fight for the community, and that's willing to represent the people. That's all that matters. You know, as I was up there, I was just listening and learning and taking instructions on what they were saying about the redistricting. So it's important that we stay committed to fighting for what's right and necessary for the people that represent us. That's all.
Thank you. Shirley Radden.
Hi, Shirley Radden, R-A-D-D-E-N. I personally feel that it's just as nonsensical for Ms. Benson to pull names out of a hat as it is to expect people from Birmingham and Bloomfield driving around in G-Wagons to be concerned with the issues of Detroit. It's really giving the blind leading the blind.
And if I'm not mistaken, these seats are all currently still, the redistricting, the seats are still held by Democrats, correct?
Yes.
But you're saying that it's not enough that they represent the same party as Black leadership would in Detroit, but that there's a distinction.
Absolutely, Kimberly. So here's the situation. There, like I pointed out earlier, there are so many issues that may not impact another community. You got the land value tax. Councilmember Waters has been up in Lansing advocating and fighting, and you have members from Hazel Park and West Bloomfield deciding the fate of Detroiters, a tax that they won't have in their own community, but they're going to subject us to it. And so if you're not listening to the voices that come from our community, we have to be in the room and be present. If you've never seen the process of being in a caucus room, we go to war to lift up the issues for Detroit. And you have to have strong voices in that room that sometimes out of ignorance, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but not knowing what the impact is. They make decisions about our city and think that it's the right thing to do, and or they do horse trading and we just catch the brunt of it. And so we gotta have representation in the room, not just Black faces, but people who are committed to Black issues. And there's a distinct difference with that as well. Because we have some Black people that sold us out too now. So this is not, and we're gonna be watching them. This is a whole new era. What we found in this being together, this Coogee Chagalia self-determination, I have a text thread of over 20 former legislators. And we don't always see things the same way. Some of us have fallen out with each other on issues, but we're coming together in a different way, in a concerted effort to say we have to establish, as Keith Williams, the chair of the Michigan Democratic Black Caucus, we're starting 2024 strong with a Black agenda for a very Black city. And it doesn't just mean Black faces, it means people who are committed to Black issues. And so that's what we're looking for, to lift up their voices in the rooms when we're advocating for policies that grossly impact us. Why was not the emergency manager law addressed in these 2 years that we had a majority? Why was not redlining addressed? You don't put 25% of us over 8 Mile and say those 25% are going to be able to be influential, as one of the commissioners pointed out. We know that was a farce. We knew that was a lie. To put Jeff Chalmers in with Grosse Pointe and St. Clair Shores and say they have boats and yachts in common. Who over in Jeff Chalmers is riding around in boats and yachts? So you gotta have people who have cultural competency and be a voice in Lansing fighting for those issues. And we're watching all of them. These seats are majority Democrat. That's not going to change. So the whole issue of them trying to say the sky is falling, somehow we're gonna cause a loss of majority, that's a lie. That's not true. So I'm asking them to come to the table now that we have secured this victory for Detroit, and let's work together so the seats can reflect who we are in Detroit. Nothing about us without us. That's simply all we're saying. And we're glad that we have an opportunity to weigh in on this process.
Sharon, in my ignorance on the legislative and judicial processes, is this the last step you took it to appellate court and won? Is there some potential pushback by the other side that could keep this actually from happening?
No, this is from our attorneys. Jennifer, you can weigh in here, but this is the last stop. It's time to now move it. And what I would also recommend, as many of my colleagues have pointed out on our legislative thread, that we now need to go back and look at that referendum and see from the flaws inherent in the process to fix it, so that commissioners are not led astray. And we can fix, if we're gonna have this commission that continue to exist, it has to come with some criteria that doesn't allow for outside interests, like Pastula and Bruce Adelson, leading them astray and fooling them into this process. But she can speak, Jennifer, you can speak to the process in that regard.
Well, the commission, the time has not yet run for an appeal to be filed, and I have had no indication, I don't think anyone on my team has had an indication that they intend to appeal, but that is still a possibility.
So they can potentially say, hey, we don't like the decision that the federal appellate court made, and we want to appeal that decision, and they could go to maybe even a higher court.
They could attempt, but it's technically not the federal appellate court. We're in the federal district court. Yeah, the trial court level.
I know that you expressed concerns about, these new commissioners being selected through drawing a name out of a hat. Is there anything you can do about that, or is your only hope with the special master?
The process for selecting commissioners has nothing to do with our lawsuit. That's set by Michigan law, separate and apart from the claims that we brought regarding the map drawing process. So they will be selected as set forth in Michigan law, and that's not part of our requested remedy that we'll be briefing on January 2nd. Will not entail, a special process to draw new members. They'll be selected in the ordinary course.
Can I zoom out here for just a second? I know this is a very important issue with respect to Detroit and with respect to Michigan. Obviously, we've got a 2024 election that's coming up between two very different presidential candidates, potentially a rematch between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And we understand that there are razor-thin margins in a lot of different places, including a battleground state theater like Michigan. So can you speak to why this is so important? Because I think a lot of people have talked about democracy is on the line, things like that. And when you have issues like redlining, redistricting, and gerrymandering, those can be the difference between a state going red or a state going blue.
Right, so we're actually trying to assist the Democrats in that regard, and I'm going to have to hopefully have Keith Williams and all those stakeholders that are a part of the Democratic caucus, although at the Black Democratic caucus, to weigh in. And far too often, as former legislators, we don't get asked our opinion or our voice. Far too often in our community, the contracts for elections don't come to our city and people that look like us. I think if they want to secure a victory, we have proven, especially as Black women, that we secured the victory for the Democratic Party. And so if we want to secure another victory for 2024, let's put something on the table for the African American community. And I think we can help with that. And so we're committed to that, but we have to get this issue addressed first so that we can get fairness and equity in our community, and then we can help make the lift as we always have with nothing in return.
A lot of times people talk about elected officials and what they are doing and what they're not doing. But with Virgil Smith, Judge Virgil Smith, who is here today, and myself, for years, from the time that we were in the city council, Virgil, how many years ago was that, Virgil?
About 10 or 15 now.
Is it 10 or 15 or more?
Or more.
Or more, that we have continuously been fighting this battle and supporting.
And that's 90 years of wisdom.
Yes.
90 years of wisdom, yes.
If I may ask, what has been the Secretary of State's pushback on this? Are they worried that that other areas, districts, regions will push back and want a special master, or will file a similar lawsuit alleging the same thing?
Well, you know, I can't speak to the Secretary of State. All I can say is, being an expert in this field, as someone who has written scholarly articles on redistricting and the voting process, one of the main foundations of her campaign, I remember sitting, just talk about historical, when she was asking for the endorsement of former Congressman John Conyers. I was sitting right there in his federal office. And so she articulated issues on voting issues even back then. And you often hear during her campaign speech of her talking about her husband and those in the military being disenfranchised. So as someone who is very astute in this area, I have to say that, you know, while she has, as she pointed out, a ministerial obligation, I think she also has an obligation to uphold what she knows is right with respect to VRA and the 14th Amendment. So I don't know what the trepidation is, but I know what is right. And I was told by another senior who's 93, who sent me a Christmas card the other day, Miss Eleanor Hutchins, a friend of, they both go to Mayflower Church, that you can never go wrong doing right. And so I encourage our Secretary of State to always choose right, as Ms. Hutchins highlighted to me. Yes?
Why do you have faith that a special master will do any better job than what the commission's done?
Well, the Bible says place no confidence in man. So I don't place the confidence in the special master. The Bible also says that there is safety in a multitude of counsel. And so the people that you see here today, again, like I talked about, on that thread of legislators, there are several of us that iron sharpens iron. We talk about issues. Many of them have shared data. Again, we've had fallouts on issues, but all of them, many of them haven't been invited to be a part of this process because those that were there in 2010 who helped draw these maps, I'm entrusting the knowledge that many of them have. And I've invited some others, but I don't want to name names prematurely, to be a part of this process. There are a number of Black institutions and organizations that may not have been a part of the lawsuit, but now that we're here, we want them to take a look at any maps that our expert, Sean Trendy, has already provided, and anything going forward. And so we're hopeful that those collective voices will be a part of the process and saying, I think this accomplishes it.
I want to poke your mind as a former lawmaker.
I don't like people poking my mind.
It's the job. But you mentioned police accountability package. Why do you personally think that nothing happened with those bills this year?
So I think it's oftentimes political in nature, and I don't want to demonize many of my former colleagues and some of the new ones. I try to maintain relationships, and like I said, I always reach back because you have to reach back and talk to those who served before you. It's just the machine of how it has always worked of doing things in a way that secures the victory for the Dems and then focuses on maintaining it instead of doing something that would be perceived as too controversial. And so the lobbyists weigh in, different lobbyist interests weigh in, how are the police gonna feel about this? And it's not all police. Thankfully, we've been blessed not to have some of the atrocities that we've seen nationally, but we know that issues need to be addressed. Former caucus chair, Detroit caucus chair, Tanisha Yancey, who is now a judge. This is one of the most pressing issues, and she was a part of this lawsuit early on, and now because she is a judge, she's not present. But that was one of the key issues that we talked about even after I left in 2020, just being disappointed that you're always told to wait. So it's a part of the machine.
And what do you think is because of this new lack of black voices in the legislature, why these bills haven't even received a committee hearing yet?
Well, Virgil, did you want to weigh in?
I mean, we went from 10 to 3. I mean, you go from having strong voices, like my colleague Lamar Lemons over there, we served together in each council, my colleague Mary Waters, to 3. So now, our numbers are dwindling. So do those same 3, are they the hard chargers? Or do they just want to kind of go along and get along? I'm not trying to cast any aspersions, but now that we're down to 3, you have colleagues that say, well, you don't have the numbers now. They'll blatantly say that to me. You just don't have the numbers now.
So you have to have strategy and understand. In some instances, people don't get a real glimpse of what the legislature is until you serve there. I know that many of the new members have getting their sea legs. I didn't know how to negotiate when I first got there, but I sat down with Snyder and negotiated $3 million to come to our city. I didn't know how to negotiate and horse trade for certain issues. But when it came down to passing new legislation for the casinos, I was fighting for money to come back home to our community. Thankfully, some of which has come out now to make sure that we address the clean slate issues that are in the city of Detroit. So it's a process, and being able to have those relationships with members across the aisle in both chambers, and to be able to horse trade, something that's important in Belleville, something that's important in Canton, something that's important in Poughkeepsie, may not be an issue in Detroit, and we could give them our vote. But then when it's time for us to bring our caucus together as 15 solid votes, as a former Detroit caucus chair, I need to go negotiate and say, I can give you 10 if you can give me this. And that's the process a lot of people don't understand.
And, the land value tax bill is still there. They are looking to reform the auto no-call. How concerned are you if there is no special elections in 2024 for these House seats? What could happen with those reforms without Detroit voices?
Well, you see lobby interests are weighing in. People with big money are weighing in oftentimes. Just think back to the whole auto no-fault debacle. The threats that went forward against Detroit caucus members, all of the secret money that was pumped into the advertisements and billboards. We didn't have that luxury of having any money. Like this whole effort right here is grassroots. You saw me coming in, putting up posters, putting up things. It's like this is a grassroots effort. There's no grassroots money to fight for issues, but there's a lot of dark money that get pumped into other issues. And so you have members who may not be as strong, who are scared about losing their seat. The late Councilman Clyde Cleveland, when I sat down with him, and I worked for him in city council, I worked there for 9.5 years. I asked, what is the best legislator or the best, at that time, elected or council member? He said, a person that always serves like it's their last time. And I took that to heart, and I always lived by it. I've never worried about my next election. I'm worried about the issues, and so we have people who are worried about their next elections, and so oftentimes they gamble against their own interests. All right, if there are no more questions, I want to again bring up our plaintiffs because it's important to see who they are. Shirley Radin, Tanisha Wilson, Devontae, come up a little closer. Devontae Sherrod, Natalie Bianami, Michelle Smith. Give our plaintiffs, step up ladies, give our plaintiffs a round of applause. Without our plaintiffs, without that institutional memory from Virgil Pye Smith, Lamar Lemons, and all those who have been on the legislative thread talking about this, I am thankful that we were victorious, and it's time to get to work for 2024. Habaragani! Habaragani! Thank you all so much. If you want to do individual interviews on the side, we'll avail ourselves. Thank you.